Let's talk about overthinking today. Oh my goodness, this has hit me so hard lately. I'm going to be spilling all the tea today on how to recognize it, what it looks like in real life, what it's really all about, and if you stick with me till the end, I'll tell you how to pull out of it. Before I jump into that, I want to put in a quick plug for my free guide on how to build confidence. You'll find that link down below in the description. It's a great resource that goes right along with this topic, as overthinking everything can really do a number on your self-confidence. Let's talk first about how to recognize overthinking. It's that feeling of getting stuck in your head with a million thoughts, looping this way and that, but not able to get any of them to stick because you keep looking at everything from a million different angles, giving all kinds of reasons and excuses why things are not moving forward, and trying to make everything perfect before it ever sees the light of day. Let's start with what overthinking really is. On the surface, it might look like hyperfocus, overachieving, extreme productivity, but it's not. More often than not, it's about fear, and it's far more about what we're trying to avoid rather than what we're trying to achieve. We're trying not to feel something unpleasant rather than to make something better. So what kind of fear are we talking about? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is fear of failure. Not being good enough, making the wrong choice. What if I don't get this right? What will other people think? What does it say about me if I get this wrong? Yeah, all those kind of things. It can also look like fear of success. What happens if this goes well and people want more? Can I keep up with it? How much time and energy will I be willing to put into it moving forward? How much will it require? Is this really what I want to be doing? Will it be safe for me to succeed? And that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because what if I do succeed? What will my friends and family say? Will they celebrate me? Will they downplay my accomplishments? And what happens if I succeed and it collapses like it did before? All of those things are real thoughts that I have had going through my head this week, and that feels pretty scary and vulnerable. But if we look busy and we feel busy and we're running really fast, we get to avoid all of that, right? Nope. It just creates more overwhelm, leaves more stuff to sort out and deal with, and leaves more frustration when you can't keep up with it. So how do we recognize when we've fallen into this pattern? In order to recognize overthinking patterns, I believe you need to know its friends. They are overwhelm, procrastination, analysis paralysis, or the inability to make a decision and then follow through with it, perfectionism, people-pleasing, making excuses for all of it, and justifying all of them. They all might sound like they're different things, but they're really all rooted into the same thing. Old, outdated programming that creates fear. And it's really our brain's way of trying to compensate for it or to keep us safe. Here's another fun thing about overthinking. It's usually not the leader of the pack. It is almost always preceded by something else. Overwhelm, overstimulation, burnout, high expectations, all those kind of things. And your body will usually feel it and react to it before you're even consciously aware that it's going on. What you might notice is that you may have seen one of its friends show up, like procrastination, or getting lost in all the details, or overcomplicating things and trying to add as many bells and whistles as you can to make it even more awesome, or maybe it's a strong urge to multitask. Once you become aware of all those things, you'll then likely start to notice the swirling thoughts, the inability to make a decision, the spinning in circles, and the lack of focus. So how do we get out of it? Honestly, that's really a loaded question because how to get out of it depends on why you're in it. And a lot of times we like to look for quick fixes. Just tell me how to get out of this right now. And there are some things we can start to implement really quickly. But if you really want to make big changes, it takes digging deeper and sorting out all of the underlying stuff, which is actually what I love to do and what I love to help other people do as well. For me, the first thing that became obvious is that I was overwhelmed. There was too much to do, too many unfinished projects, all of which were taking too much time, too much money, and not really getting anywhere. And all of them held an equally high priority ranking. They were all, number one, I must get it done absolutely right now because I need something in my world to feel settled and for the chaos to stop. It also looked like getting frustrated because none of that was happening. Now, I teach this stuff. I know this stuff. I know it's not realistic, but I'm human and I still did it anyway. Rather than beating myself up though, I used it as valuable information. Something was off and I knew that I needed to step back and to reassess, to get out of the weeds and to really look at the situation for what it is. That's when I really started to see all of the pieces. Now I know I'm a recovering perfectionist, so I recognized that piece of things right away. I had solidly fallen back into that trap. That perfectionism was a compensation for all the stress I was feeling. And falling back into perfectionism resulted in overwhelm. And overwhelm drives overthinking. See how that cycle works? It can create a very vicious spiral if we're not careful. As promised, here's what I did to pull out of it and get back on track though. As I pulled back and started to look closer at all the pieces, I found a lot of what I like to call fiddly bits lying around. They're non-critical, menial tasks that have been on my to-do list forever. What that really looked like is a whole lot of half-finished or maybe even nearly finished projects that never made it quite across the finish line. They weren't in just one part of my life though. It was everywhere. The most obvious source of all of that was that we moved last spring and we still have boxes everywhere. And most of our stuff has been in storage until just a few weeks ago while we finished our basement. As a result, nothing feels settled. Most stuff doesn't match our house anymore. There's lots of visual and physical clutter everywhere. That alone is a recipe for overwhelm. The next most obvious area of overwhelm is that I made some very huge and significant changes in my coaching business. That resulted in me 100% blowing everything up and starting from scratch. I have no regrets, but it's a lot of work to close everything out, start over, and get reestablished. But that's not all. I had to get real. These issues didn't start with the move. They've been going on for a very long time. There's lots of unfinished courses and trainings, half-finished home improvement projects, reports that need to be filed, books that need to be balanced, and lots of excuses as to why none of it was getting done. That's when I had to look even deeper. And what I found there was loose ends in family relationships that we can't clean up because the relationships involve two people and the other sides aren't really willing. That brings a lot of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of disappointment. And I am utterly exhausted from all of it. And there's the real driver. The unfinished emotional business, driven by trauma, loss, and grief, old imprints, messaging, and beliefs sticking to me like sticky little burrs and screaming that it's not safe for me to be seen, to be heard, or to know anything. And that's the tricky part. I didn't really realize they were there or they were still affecting me this much until I really pulled them to the surface. And that's the way of things. These kind of thoughts are almost always subconscious. They were probably imprinted as young children or have very, very strong emotional ties to a person or event that happened later. What that really looked like in life is fear of both success and failure. Manifested by shiny object syndrome, which is always chasing the next best shiny thing that's supposed to solve all the problems, and moving on to something else before truly finishing and giving those things I've been working on a chance. And it didn't just show up in one place. It showed up everywhere. The cool part is that once we move it from the subconscious to the conscious, we can do something about it. For me, that looked like making a plan to tackle all that unfinished emotional business. Maybe you can fix relationships, maybe you can't. Either way, do what's necessary to complete the grieving process for what's been lost. it's also important to note that we cannot ignore that piece of things. If we do, it will always keep looping and it will come back and kick us again. So once we got clear on that, it was time to regroup, reprioritize, and put things in order. That means looking at all the things that need to be done and breaking down each step and each task into smaller, little manageable pieces and then putting everything in order. Then start with the easiest thing to finish and make a plan to get it done. For me, I decided to set aside an hour the first thing every morning and start chipping away at all that stuff I don't want to do. I actually set a timer, do it until the timer stops, and then I put it away until the next day. And I've been amazed at what I've been able to get done since I started doing that. I've also had to do the same thing with getting my house settled. Start on one little area at a time, get it finished, and then realize it's going to take as long as it takes. So I have to be patient and chip away at it. And then give myself tons of grace when it isn't perfect, because it's not going to be for a long time. The last thing I realized I needed to do was to let it and me and all the things be a work in progress and give myself a lot of grace in the messy middle part. And I absolutely encourage you to do the same thing. I want to remind you again to grab that free guide on building confidence. Stay connected with me. Let's do this together. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what works and what doesn't for you when it comes to pulling out of funk and getting things moving forward again. I'd love to connect with you. I'll see you next time. Bye.